Welcome, everyone. Thanks for being here. I'm seeing the attendees list growing rapidly. Let's give it just a few more seconds until I see a pause and a bump up of attendees. I'll draw your attention to the Q&A. You'll see I pinned some links we wanted to draw your attention to. And this will be where you interact with us. And of course, when we get to the end, you'll have the ability to unmute yourself and we'll have a discussion. I will go ahead and get started. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to our global community. Thanks for being here and for the many ways you have supported building transparency and helped shape EC3 over the years. I'm Allison Kin-Bennett, now in my 5th month at BT as Executive Director, and I'm joined by my colleagues Aziza Priota, our Data Manager, Vaslav Hasik, our Technical Director, and Michaela De Rousseau, a former BT team member, now supporting us as an independent consultant, helping translate your feedback into the future of EC3. Next slide, please, Vaslav. I think we're all feeling the urgency to enable broad and swift climate action across the construction industry to address embodied carbon's role in climate change. Across the globe, demand for trustworthy embodied carbon data is accelerating quickly, from buy clean policies, scope 3 accounting, green building rating systems, building codes, carbon tariffs, digital product passports, etc. All of these depend on standardized digital product lifecycle environmental data and on a data infrastructure that is publicly accessible and neutrally stewarded. At the same time, commercial proprietary tools are expanding into whole building carbon budgeting, compliance workflows, multi-agent material comparisons, which is great news, great progress for the industry. And it helps clarify EC3's role. EC3 does not need to compete feature for feature with commercial software. Instead, our role at Building Transparency is to strengthen EC3 as the trusted data backbone, infrastructure relied on by other software platforms, policymakers, owners, manufacturers, and practitioners alike. And to support that future, the platform needs to evolve. Candidly, as I'm sure some of you feel on a daily basis, parts of EC3 were never designed for the scale of demand we're now seeing. And that's what EC3 2.0 is all about. A quick note before I move on, while today is about EC3 2.0, we're also very excited about a partnership bringing Tally 2.0 to market this year. More on that soon. Importantly, though, I want to emphasize our mission remains unchanged here at Building Transparency. And next slide, please. That mission only works because of this ecosystem, so I want to pause to recognize our supporters. And next slide, please. And our partners and our collaborators. Thank you to everyone working with us to improve transparency and data quality across the industry. And next slide. As our team will share in more depth across these sessions, our goals include modernizing the backend, improving data quality, expanding global coverage and interoperability, strengthening material comparisons, improving our APIs, and supporting additional impact categories, and putting a sustainable nonprofit revenue stream in place while keeping the core open and accessible. Across these sessions, some things may feel familiar, some new, and some very technical and jargony. Please hang in there. I'm really feeling that too as the relative newcomer. EC3 lives at the intersection of policy, practice, and software, and our roadmap reflects all three. So your feedback is helping us prioritize what comes first, what may come later, and maybe what isn't needed at all. So please use the discussion time and Q&A here actively and follow up with the feedback form I have linked. And with that, I'll hand it over to Václav.
Thank you, Allison. And hi, everyone. So happy to have you on the call. Again, please, share all the feedback that you can. I'll start with just sharing a little bit about some of the forms of feedback that we've already processed and have gotten. As some of you who are heavy users of EC3 may know, we have the report bugs and feedback button, which is one of the ways that we've collected to date over 4,000 different tickets from our users. So we've processed a lot of that improvements feedback from that platform to inform whatever we are planning going forward, which is what we will go over today. We also obviously have emails, so we've received a lot of feedback from email channels, and you may have already noticed the feedback form that we recently posted to really solicit final, close to final feedback on the direction of EC3 2.0. And the last portion here is obviously we do also show up in person to certain events like Greenbuild and other places, and we do, have calls periodically with some of our partners and even our users, and all of that feedback is heard. So please don't be shy about letting us know what you think. It does help us plan and prioritize going forward. And as I mentioned, we have already collected some of the feedback from these various platforms that I just pointed out. And we currently have about 15 individual topical areas that we've kind of organized this feedback into. And we currently have a spreadsheet of 144 individual features or requests that we've seen across all these channels. Some of them also that we know about internally that will help us improve our internal processes and the overall reliability of the platform going forward. And so I will start with an overview of EC3 1.0. Again, this is kind of the introductory session. The subsequent sessions that Allison mentioned will be more deep dive sessions into the individual topical areas. But I think it is helpful to just quickly go through all of the features that EC3 provides currently. And so that's all of the features that we're also gathering feedback for. I know there are specific user groups probably on this call that spend more time in certain places of EC3. And so we're just going to go and do probably the fastest walkthrough that I will ever do of some of the main functionalities of EC3. After that, we will actually go into some of the main improvement topics that we have on our list already. So as you may know, there's two main features of EC3. One is the comprehensive EPD database that is openly accessible. And there are some search functionalities and comparison features related specifically to just providing the EPD data to our user audience. The second part of EC3 is the plan and compare buildings feature, which is heavily used by our architects, engineers, and contractors, as well as building owners to collect material quantity data and connect it with EPDs and do more holistic embodied carbon assessments of entire building and infrastructure projects. Just to give you the scale of the size of the tool and our user base to date, so we have over 120,000 currently valid EPDs. You may have seen some other numbers around. We do have a total number of over 200,000 EPDs in the database, but that also includes some of the expired EPDs. As you may know, we don't delete expired EPDs from the database because of the connection to existing building projects and the need for essentially indefinite documentation and auditability of those projects in the platform. We also have overall of 67,000 registered users. Now, that number is quite high. I think we have maybe 4,000 monthly active users. So those are, actively participating users on a monthly basis. We have currently 17,000 building projects across all of you, across the entire globe. And that spans over 80 countries, over 6,000 companies, and we currently have over 15 different integrators of our API, and that includes integrating the EPD data digitally, but also integrating with our project planner as well. So that just gives you the overall scale of what we are, maintaining and what we're behind, and what we're trying to improve going forward. Now, again, the super fast walkthrough. So here's a sneak or a quick look at the largest open access nonprofit stewarded EPD database, which historically has focused mainly on A1 to A3 life cycle stages and mainly on global warming potential, but there are some changes planned for EC3 2.0 based on all of your feedback. We started in North America, but we do cover global regions, and we get our data from different platforms that are already out there in terms of program operators and other aggregator platforms that we work with. But our users can also import their own PDF documents that they are trying to work with if we don't have those EPDs yet. And we digitize those PDFs into the open access database. We are currently covering over 200 different product categories in EC3. If you're a public user, you probably see much smaller chunk of those categories, but we also have some plans to change that. And so we also collect different attributes and aspects that facilitate better comparability of some of the EPD data. Comparability is a big issue when we talk about EPDs. I mentioned, there's search functionalities of the tool. So again, we try to provide you easy ways of finding the data that you need. And again, specifying things that describe the performance characteristics of the products that you are about to compare to make those comparisons valid. You can also look at individual EPDs, but you can see the category statistics across all of those 200 product categories. Actually, that's an overstatement. In some categories, we do limit the comparability or even the statistics if there are not enough ways that we can actually normalize and align all of the data within the category. You can also do comparisons, as I mentioned, across, what is the embodied carbon across manufacturers, multiple product lines. You can look at the differences between plants, and you can look at the differences between individual products on the platform. On the plan and compare building side of things, so you can enter your general project information and track individual characteristics of the project itself. That's for portfolio management purposes. And then we have the bill of material quantities table, where you can enter your material quantities. You can link those line items with EPDs or just general categories more broadly. And you can also use some of our calculators or assembly builders to translate some of your quantities that you may have as an architect, engineer, or contractor into the quantities that the EPDs come in. So for example, a lot of the steel products come in mass, but you may have different sizes and lengths of different steel members that you may need to translate into the mass of those materials. We also have the A4 transportation calculations at the project planner level with some defaults built in and some automated ways of calculating estimated distance between project site and the plant where the EPD is made or the product is made. We also have the A5 construction module where you can enter your resource use at the project level. And it says A1 to A5 project level impacts. And again, this is all focused on carbon footprint at the project planner level. And then you can also use some of our charts to better understand the contributions of different systems of the building, different material types, and different products from specific manufacturers, and their contribution towards the overall project footprint. And then finally, a couple last slides on the project planner. So there are some collaboration features built in so that people can share and collaborate on projects. And you can also export some of the data into Excel, usually for documentation or additional post-processing. And there are, obviously we do allow you to track the impacts in your material quantity tables across multiple buildings or projects. You can track your entire portfolios. And so this is all that is there for plan and compare buildings and projects. This is a very fast walkthrough, so this is not really meant to be a deep intro into the tool. I think that most people on this call are probably here because they are or have been heavy users of some of these features and are here to share some of their feedback and ideas for improvements. So just kind of level setting, and once we get into the discussion part, I can also bring some of these slides back up to facilitate additional discussions on any of these features. Now back to EC3 2.0, what have we already gathered in terms of feedback, and what are some of our priorities, at a higher level in general. Again, we will be diving into some of the specifics of EPD management, EPD sourcing, project planner, and then API and integrations in more depth in the coming days and weeks. So with that, let me start with some of the overarching user experience and interface improvements that we know people are having issues with and that we are planning to address. Some of the interface improvements and platform simplifications are on our list. We do get some feedback that the platform is still a little bit too cumbersome and difficult to use, especially for newcomers. And some functionalities are kind of hidden away from sight and not necessarily obvious, in terms of how to use or find certain functionality within the tool. So we are planning to address some of those interface questions. We have on our list on improving some of the onboarding and tutorial resources that we will provide once we make some of those larger changes to the platform as well. And part of this also comes with accessibility compliance. This has been, in our talks with policymakers and others in the past, one of the aspects of user interface has to be accessibility. It wasn't necessarily built into the platform from day one, but it is on our radar. And in our initial steps towards redesign of the user interface, we are already starting with consideration of accessibility aspects of the user interface. One of the other major pain points that I know some of our users are having are with some of the slow loading times in certain pages. So I'm not going to shy away with pointing that out here. We have that on our radar. We are currently working on implementing tools that help us profile some of the sources of those long loading times. And this is one of the highest priorities for us to address, is some of the underlying infrastructure improvements to the tool, some of the improvements into how certain pages load to really make it more responsive, and so you don't have to wait so much in certain pages. Back with the interface improvements, one of the other things is that we have gotten feedback on is some of the limitations to the tables that we provide. A lot of the scrolling across pages, kind of rigidness of some of the tables that we have, and even some of the limitations to the filtering, especially in the project planner table. Those are all on our list to address with EC3 2.0. Multiple language support and to support global user base. We do already have some of that multi-language support within the tool today, but the idea is basically to maintain and expand and make sure that we update all of those, some of that multi-language support going forward as well, that we don't kind of drop that or leave that behind. And one of the last things in terms of user experience and interface requests that we've been having, especially mostly recently, is to integrate more AI assisted features. So there are some ideas on how we could do that, where we could bring in AI to assist with certain features within the tool. one of the ideas is specifically within the project planner interface to help people faster map, from their element names to the actual product categories or even EPDs that they are trying to assign, so that people don't have to go through the whole process of defining all of the categories. If there are additional ideas on AI-assisted features, we're also welcoming that feedback. In terms of EPD data and search improvements, so one of the biggest ones that we have been hearing for a while now is the uncertainty adjustments to the global warming potential values in EC3. So one of our top priorities is to shift away from the uncertainty adjusted GWP to the reported GWP. That's obviously going to change a lot of the calculations within project planners, within people's projects, as well as it will change the approach to comparability of different EPDs. And with that, we will need to address showing additional data quality aspects on the search page, because the initial idea behind the uncertainty adjustments was to make sure that we address at least the specificity of the EPDs. And the fact that one EPD is not exactly equal to another in terms of specificity, right? So again, there will be some improvements in, instead of showing uncertainty, showing things like specificity checkboxes explicitly instead of saying what the uncertainty may be because of those. And also more transparently show the PCRs or the regions for which the EPDs were initially developed. Again, there are some underlying background features that are built into EC3 1.0 that are meant to address those things, but we think it's important to be more transparent and provide more education to the end users than cast judgment on some of the data that we're digitizing. In terms of the additional EPD fields, so the environmental indicators beyond GWP is something that I mentioned earlier. We have many users that are asking us to more consistently digitize those fields and provide them across all of our data. Right now, you will find that our database includes a mix of EPDs where we do have mostly just global warming potential values available, and some EPDs that we've parsed more recently with our latest parsing system that include more than just global warming potential. Ultimately, we have some additional checks that we do on the global warming potential values that we don't do currently on the additional environmental impact categories, but we can address some of those improvements in EC3 2.0 as well to make sure that our users get a more complete picture of the original EPD documents. With that, you can also see on this page that we have sort of a rigid structure to how we call some of the impact categories. And so on ingestion of any of the EPD data that's out there, we actually convert them into our consistent format. And this is to make it easier for every other platform that is using our data to worry less about understanding the different environmental impact categories and spending time on aligning them. But ultimately, what it does cause is a little bit less transparency on exactly where did we get certain values from the PDF, right? How were they translated into the digital footprint that you see in EC3? And so, for example, here in the middle, you can see that a PDF document may have GWP excluding or including biogenic carbon, and that would automatically get translated and normalized in our system. But instead, we could actually digitize the original format first and show both of them at the same time. So there's a little bit more transparency on what actually happens during the digitization process. And with that, one of the other largest feedback points that we've had is handling of biogenic carbon. So we currently allow, or we have some EPDs that have the GWP biogenic line items on the EPD page itself, and that also has the biogenic embodied carbon emissions and the stored embodied biogenic carbon within the product itself. but those are only available currently on the individual EPD page. They're not used anywhere else throughout the platform. And so one of the other improvements that we plan to address is better integration of some of the biogenic carbon reporting within the platform. In terms of sourcing and some of the searching improvements, so we plan to improve the way that the structure of the search page is. We plan to show some fields that are more important than others, not showing all of them all at once, but also kind of guide users through the ones that are probably required and maybe a good idea to have filled in first, again, to facilitate better comparisons of EPD data. And also just make it a little bit more approachable. We do get some feedback that sometimes people get overwhelmed by the amount of different filters that are out there, and it's not actually clear which filters are more reliable than others. That is also the case, right? Depending on which attributes we can actually track for EPDs, there may be different reliability in some of these search filters. And then finally, some improvements to the statistics diagrams, some of the charts and just visualizations of how the EPD data shows up is also on our radar. In terms of the project planner and assemblies improvements, so we know that there are some issues or limitations in how people can actually structure the different folders of projects. So we have that on our radar to improve the organization of the projects in the first place. And then there are some broader improvements that we have planned for specifically the quantity table. And that includes importing from a spreadsheet. We've heard that for many years, that people wanted to be able to, they might have an Excel file, they want to import from an Excel file. Obviously, we still have some integrations with other platforms that you can still also import your quantities from those platforms. We are probably going to be shifting away from managing some of those integrations ourselves and really doubling down on making the API more usable and sort of empowering the third-party platforms to take on some of the development of the integrations or plugins for EC3 themselves, because they ultimately know their platforms better than we do. And it's also just to focus our building transparency resources in the places that the entire community really wants us to double down on and provide the best data quality and infrastructure quality across the board. We do have on our list the expansion of the assemblies and the calculators that are currently within the EC3 platform. And that's to a little bit closer mimic to what, for example, Tally platform currently has. It has a little bit more broader set of assemblies and calculators that make it much easier for architects and engineers to use. And there's also some ideas about potentially setting up a library, kind of like we have a library of projects today. We could have a library of assemblies that you can then pull directly into these projects, and you don't have to rebuild some of these assemblies from scratch, essentially. In terms of the background improvements, and this is mainly going to be for any of the integrators with EC3, one of the feedbacks that we've gotten from many sides is more consistent patterns and naming conventions within our schemas and APIs. There are some endpoints that may call the same thing something different. And so there, we do have some improvements planned and plan to engage a lot of you in discussing, what are some of the main pain points of the digital schema and the API validations and other messages that you get when you are trying to interact with our API or application programming interface. And then last one on the sort of integrator side of things, this is a request that we've heard recently, is also thinking about model context protocol enablement for any AI integrations that people may want to work on with the EPD data or even the project data. Not every AI enablement has to actually happen within the EC3 tool. If we make all of the data and the context more available, to you all. Some of you may actually find very creative ideas of using that information even further beyond EC3. And to wrap up my slides, at least for now, is just noting some of the background improvements that we are working on. We have already kicked off some of them internally, but are still planning to address is major refactoring and addressing of some of the technical debt in the coding side in our software development, which will ultimately help us catch a lot of these bugs that we might sometimes run into before they actually go out there. There's also additional testing improvements that are on our radar. And we are also planning a database migration and some other infrastructure improvements that are ultimately the backbone for making the platform more responsive and a little bit easier to update even from our side at times. So those are some of the background notes here. And just know that there's a lot of stuff that you don't see necessarily on the user interface side that is kind of happening behind the background as well. And ultimately, with this slide, the entire reason why we're doing these feedback sessions and why we're embarking on this EC3 2.0 path is to, we know that we've been kind of in a maintenance mode over the past year, and now we've gathered enough power or support behind us to really upsize our team again and start working on some of the feature changes and really overhaul the platform in 2026 for continuous use towards all of your usage that you have as the end users. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Allison, I think, and we'll actually open up the floor to all of you to give us additional feedback or even just reactions to anything that I've already gone through.
Awesome. So let's go there. I'm not seeing many questions. I did publish one for you, Vaslav, that I didn't feel very confident in answering. You'll see that published. But in the meantime, while you're thinking about a response to that, please raise your hand if you would like to get in on this conversation. And as you know, we're recording. We'll also be able to capture questions in the Q&A that we may not be able to answer live today. We'll try to answer those at future sessions or on our website in some way or via email. So I think first up, I see Anthony's hand. I will try to unmute you if you can't unmute yourself. I think you should be able to unmute yourself, actually.
I can unmute.
Great.
Awesome. Great. So exciting to see this. Great work. I'm curious with, you mentioned, for example, biogenic carbon, or actually, no, the other environmental impact categories, some of those past EPDs have not been extracted for that. I'm wondering, do you guys have plans for going back on the old PDFs and reparsing those? And then the second question is also, what are your thoughts on like expanding the scope for later life cycle stages beyond A1 to A3? Yeah, that's it for me.
Yeah, absolutely. So with the focus on additional life cycle stages and including the additional life cycle impact categories, currently we do the parsing on the new EPDs that come in, but we don't necessarily broadly reparse all of the data within the platform. For the EC3 2.0 effort, that can absolutely happen. So, that is on our list, and we would plan to reparse some of the existing data that's in the platform as well. There's one small caveat to that point, though, is that for some of the data that is pushed to us directly, we don't actually necessarily have the underlying documents to be able to do the additional parsing. So there's also going to have to be additional communication with those partners that we have in making sure that we pull in any of the additional data that will be available to be pulled in and make sure that we work a little bit closer with them to make sure that we get the full comprehensive picture on that, on those EPDs.
Great, thanks. And the later life cycle stages?
So on the individual EPD pages, yes, we can extract those as well. And we have been doing it on some of them. In terms of the project planner, we do have some mock-ups that we've done in the past 2 years that were just never implemented. So yes, we could also implement other life cycle stages within the project planner. Initially, it would focus again just on carbon footprints though in the project planner interface.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, send us your ideas if there's anything that Václav said that you want to comment on. Thanks, Anthony. Lindsay.
Hello. Yeah, great presentation, Václav. Thank you for sharing all that. Definitely exciting to hear some of the stuff that's under consideration. I want to echo the excitement about additional impact categories. I think that has been something that has required us to duplicate some work across different tools. So it'd be super exciting to see that integrated all into one platform. With the team considering doing that, would that be something that would then allow for visualization and reporting of those additional impact categories in addition to them being reported within the database? Meaning that like whatever exported Excel reports and stuff that we can get of results would include those impact categories as well?
Yes, there is a possibility of doing that, and it is on our list, on that list of 144 items. That is one of the things. And so again, yeah, it's good to have the feedback just to see that people are interested in seeing more, more of the charts and analytics across more than just global warming potential.
Yeah, it definitely
so
helps
yeah.
with a lot of the like lead and envision work that we do. So great to hear. The one follow-up question I had related to that was the move away from the uncertainty adjusted GWP. Is that also going to impact some of the graphs and tables that end up getting produced on the platform? Because I think a lot of those end up using the conservative achievable kind of parameters that y'all have for outputs, and it ends up kind of limiting the graph. So is that something that would also kind of go away as you shift away from those?
Yes, absolutely. And it actually does go along with the question in the Q&A. It's kind of how the change from reported or from uncertainty adjusted GWP to reported GWP, how does it affect how the user, interacts and what they see within the database? It will affect some of the charts and calculations within the project planners. And so there's going to be more expectation or responsibility put on the users themselves to better understand some of the differences in the data quality differences and differences in industry versus product specific EPDs. And it will trickle through pretty much all of the visualizations that you see throughout the tool. One of the things that we are considering is instead of fully removing it, just allow people to toggle it on and off. But ultimately, the first thing that we would shift to would be the reported GWP.
Awesome, thank you.
I'm just going through and publishing some comments and trying to answer them where I can, Václav. So everyone, thanks for providing your input in this Q&A, and thanks for your tolerance of awkward silence while we're getting in here. Václav, feel free to answer live or as someone asked about the timeline. I think conservatively, recognizing that we're still on the scoping phase and have not contracted for this work yet, we're aiming for sort of a two-phased approach. Phase 1, quarter 3, and phase 2, EC3 2.0 by the end of the year. But I think software development is moving more quickly all the time, and we have a great set of feedback already. We know some things that are just non-negotiables moving forward. So expect to see some of these improvements sooner rather than later. Might not feel like a full 2.0, but we expect some iteration like lagginess, and other things that we know are major pain points to happen sooner rather than later.
Should I address a couple of the comments in the chat real quick?
Yeah, please.
Then we can move to for people unmuting themselves again. So is an autosave feature something that the team is considering? Yes, it is on the list for the project planner side of things. I think there are a couple questions on the API, and I see at least one question specifically about the format that we use and some of the updates to the format. Yes, that's also on the list. And one of the things that we want to kick off in the coming weeks and months is, again, more closer communication and discussions with our third-party integrator platforms, but also the program operators that are out there that are already thinking about digital EPDs, and really try to make it easier for the entire user base that is interacting with the API. I know that people have had some major pain points over the past year that we just haven't been able to readily address besides just some smaller bugs. I think the overall format and API needs a little bit more of a rethink, and it's only going to be successful if we take everyone to the table and kind of discuss it together, right? What works for the different parties. So absolutely. Let's
Maybe
switch
let's go to the hands. Yeah.
That's right. Yep.
Rachel, you're up next. I see you unmuted, but we don't hear you. Darn. Yeah, I saw you.
Can you hear me now?
There you are. There you are.
Okay. Yeah, sorry about that. Okay. Yeah, I am coming to this from the owner side and as oh, am I echoing? Oh,
No, it sounds good to me.
Okay.
It sounds good to me. You just want to keep going.
Great.
Yeah.
I'll just power through. So I'm coming to this from the owner side and also as a relative novice. I'm glad to see that the presentation was great. And I can't personally say that I've used EC3 a ton, but a couple of the times I've tried to navigate through, it's sort of on behalf of some of our campuses, project managers who are trying to find kind of a user-friendly way to help digest EPDs that they've gotten from their contractors as submittals. And I'm speaking from the California State University Chancellor's Office. And so from the central office, we're basically responsible for collecting all of that up and getting it through permitting and any other sort of regulatory and reporting requirements. And so the project managers are also coming to the EPDs and like BICLEAN regulation for the first time, not really understanding how to read them. So we were hoping to see if EC3, like, is there any thought of making the database a little bit more searchable? I think I saw a Q&A comment to this, speaking to this angle as well. Like, is there something we can plug in and it kind of just turns up all of the high level information that we might be looking for like a group of folks who might be coming to this from like, hey, I don't know how to read scientific notation, and like the unit conversion itself it sounds like a silly thing, but it is actually the holdup for some, like erroneous entries, and then we're collecting bad data. So that's not very well worded, but yeah, essentially, is there a thought to like dummy proof this even more?
Yeah, definitely. That is on our radar. I think, like I mentioned, streamlining or improving the guiding of the end users through some of the search filters, for example, is one of the ways. I think we can still make some improvements in searchability across the different product categories. I'm just trying to show it here, but sometimes people have trouble just knowing which category to go into to find things. So I know that's another pain point. we'll consider that as well. The one thing that we always struggle with is less or kind of easier search usually also means that you might get broader set of results.
Mm-hmm.
That, so the way that we structured it initially is that we try to align as much of the data within those categories as we can. And then again, we kind of set up these filters with expert, input from the manufacturers or industry associations that have EPDs in these categories. But ultimately, that's also where some of the difficulty for the new users comes from, because a lot of this then ends up having a lot of sort of specialized jargon. So it is on our list, to gather more feedback. So any sort of specific things that you can point out about why this interface is currently too difficult for you or your colleagues to use, and things that you would like to see added. Definitely, I think if you actually write that down in an email or that feedback form, that will help. And then we'll do additional user engagement calls as well once we have some ideas and mock-ups for how things could change, to also just try to find out, are we actually hitting some of these pain points or not.
Great, that sounds good. Yeah, my colleague looks like he's filling out a feedback form and is going to email. But yeah, I think it sounds like a lot of folks on the call are coming to this as sort of seasoned practitioners, and our folks are more, like, oh, we need to comply with regulatory requirements and learn how to read EPDs for the first time. And that's been a little bit of a learning curve for us as well as them. But yeah, we will do that for sure.
One other thing that I wanted to point out on this point is if you have samples of reports that you generate for your clients, and this is maybe for the architects or engineers on the call, that you feel like are hitting the right points and kind of the right level of summarization and visualization for someone that is not necessarily an EPD expert. You could also share those with us, and we can build in some of those ways that things look and the information that they convey, alongside some of those samples or existing ways that people show that data. That's probably the best way of actually helping us figure out what works for you. Another raised hand, Melissa?
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Awesome. So I'm coming at it from the supplier side, concrete supply in particular, also asphalt and precast. And my question has to do more with the background data. So definitely liking some of the improvements I see working with end users who use this tool a lot. I'll get a lot of questions from end users, but then they're bringing things to me that don't make a lot of sense or aren't jiving with the actual information I have. And I know you guys are essentially scraping your information from the repositories that exist from other entities, but I'm just wondering, with your earlier statement that everything is kind of living on, if things are living in perpetuity and we're just collecting data for collecting data's sake, is there something in 2.0 where there will be a way for suppliers or anyone who supplies those EPDs to eliminate just EPDs that were bad data? Especially as the system evolves and understanding evolves, there's a lot of early on onset that is just not has good data behind it, and it keeps coming back if it's going to live in perpetuity, even if it has, expired. So I'm just wondering, what is your platform going to do to help the responsibility and accountability of really supplying good data?
Yeah, so it is on the list for the deep dive tomorrow for the EPD section, but I think the response is that currently, so when an EPD expires, it gets tagged as expired in EC3, and it isn't searchable when someone does a search today. That said, it's still in the database. So if you wanted to remove that filter, you can see all of the historical data. There are some other instances where we, for example, expire EPDs before the actual official expiration date. And there's some changes to, I think, how we should be doing that. Instead of just straight up overwriting the expiration date in EC3, we probably need to keep both expiration dates. One, when it was expired in EC3, and what was the original expiration date. That's one of the things. The other one is that currently we just kind of on an individual basis collect or react to user feedback or even supplier feedback when usually their own EPDs are for products that, let's say, have been discontinued, or they have replaced EPDs with an updated set of results. We currently, if there's an updated set of results, we try to find if there are related EPDs that the newer EPDs are replacing, and then again we expire the previous one on the day that the newer one was published, and so again there's a little bit of a continuity. I think you're also pointing out that sometimes the older data points just had different data quality standards, and so when people are doing, let's say, category level analyses, like what you can see on this page, right, with the statistics, you want to make sure that you're only including the latest relevant, most aligned data. I think that was, at least I read your feedback as that concern as well.
Yeah, definitely. It's, if the user had some guidance, because when I get these things and you see yourself on a bar graph and especially with concrete, it's a on-demand generator. So having 120,000 or 200,000 EPDs, that to me, that's quantity, not quality. So I want a way that the end user can siphon through and really realize they're getting quality, up-to-date EPDs that have been vetted and nothing that is lingering because it's living in perpetuity.
Yeah,
Let me speak to this. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to say that should already happen to a certain extent, right? I mentioned we don't show expired EPDs on today's searches, but again, there can obviously be improvements. If there's something specific that you feel like we could do to make sure that we do exclude more than just an EPD because it was expired, like if there's other things that we should also include in that, when is data included or excluded from a certain box plot or comparison, again, the more specific you can be with that feedback, the more helpful it is to us. So I definitely welcome additional, ideas.
And I'd love to meet. We could do that.
There's activities outside of the software that Building Transparency is engaged in to improve EPD quality. We're engaging, for example, in ACLCA's product category rule, open standard version 2.0. We're constantly providing our input on policies that will improve EPDs through greater product specificity and other means. So there's things that, as our bandwidth allows, we're engaging into at that higher level.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Marianne.
Yeah. Hi guys. Hi Alison. Hi Love. So my question is, as a someone representing the public sector who is using your template now. Using your platform now. I was curious to, and I'm sorry if this was said earlier and I missed it. I was curious to know, some of us, I know New York State is not the only state that has a sort of our own template on EC3. And, for which we in the past had received some support in terms of, setting up that special template and, giving us ability to download the data in our projects into a spreadsheet. I was just wondering whether any of that may change under sort of the new under your new leadership, and what that might look like in terms of ongoing support for governments like us.
So was that, I think I missed part of the question. Was the question about exporting like the EPD search data into a spreadsheet?
Yes, the EPD search data, and also I don't know if any of the changes that you've spoken through, because you kind of went through it rather quickly. I don't know if that would change any of the template that we have set up to capture projects specifically in our template.
Oh, I see. So initially, I don't think it would. So
Okay.
when we're planning these changes to the project planner, I think initially it's mostly focused on performance and user interface, not necessarily changing of the data that lives in that project planner. And even through that transition, we will be very clear on when there are changes to, let's say, what certain fields are called. We would be very explicit on guiding and preparing any of you that have existing projects in the platform on making sure that you don't get caught off guard and we don't just change something on the fly for you that prevents you doing what you have created these templates for and have set up other people to do in the platform. So we're going to be very mindful. This is not going to be just like a quick turn of a switch translation into EC3 2.0. It's going to be a more of a process, and we'll make sure that we communicate all of those changes to you as we go through them.
And will we still be able to ask you for the downloads, the data dump into a spreadsheet? Will that still be possible?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that will still be possible. We don't plan to take that away. All of the project data that's within the platform is all of the user user data. And so if you want to export it and take it to some other platform, that's also fine, right? The data is yours, and we will provide an efficient way for you to be able to get it out of the platform.
Great. Thank you so much.
Jane.
Hi, Vaclav. Hi, Ellison. So good to see
Hi.
you.
Yeah.
It's great. I have a question. If we're going to be utilizing the actual GWP information that's directly in the EPD, so I know that we've had lots of conversations, Vaclav, over the years about the diagram for the box plot. So, well, basically the information, your baseline, your EC3 baseline would now be the GWP that's in the actual EPD versus having a range, correct? And then from not having a range, you would have one number, and then will you use like Carbon Leadership Forum as the sort of the comparable piece to that? I was kind of trying to figure out, so now it's going to be simpler because there won't be as many numbers to evaluate. So will it be very clear that this is the GWP value for X based on the EPD because we no longer will have that uncertainty adjustment?
I think on the individual EPD level, yes. There's still the category statistics or search statistics that happen, which
Okay.
are more along the lines of what the CLF baselines provide, right? It's like the reference points to an individual EPD. And so the category statistics, those will still be available. They will all be based on the individual EPD's reported values. That makes sense.
Yeah. So because I think the reported GWP value, if you could highlight that somehow, that this is what you're using for the end user, for the designer, the architect, the person who's selecting, to me, that would be extremely helpful. I mean, I've dug around here a lot, but I have other folks in my firm and other people outside that use it, and they're not as familiar. So they don't really necessarily understand the logic, but they just need to find the EPD, put it into their process, put it into their whatever they're working on, whether it's a Green Globes, certification or whatever they might be doing. So the opportunity to make it simpler to find and read, I think could be really valuable, at least from the A&D side. And the other question I had is actually something else and came out of your last comment. I hadn't thought of this, but all the work that was done by the EPA on the EPD process, PCRs, things like that, is some of that hoping to be also brought over so that there's some consistency in some of those outside activities, if you will, that will positively impact EC3? Because I know how much work was done up to a certain point, and then, well, we know what happened. You know?
Well, we're already over time, but so let me just quickly pause and thank everyone who is here. And if you need to run to another meeting, feel free to do so. Jane, I'm happy to say that many of the EPA team members are continuing to work in this space. As I mentioned, I'm chairing currently ACLCA's product category rule standard version 2.0. There are other colleagues in other places that are working to utilize those standards based upon EPA's criteria and ACLCA's community to continue to improve and the education around and improve the robustness of EPDs, including some efforts to more clearly indicate when an EPD meets certain data quality criteria.
Thanks so much. I'm sorry to keep you over.
All good. That's where this all begins, and we only have control over so much of that, and so engaging in these external activities is critical for building transparency. So again, everyone, thank you for being here. That's exactly the discussion we wanted to kick off the series. We'll try to get these recordings posted as soon as possible on our homepage, and we'll continue to reach out as we have announcements regarding delivery. Hope you can join us at future sessions, and thanks again for your time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
I'm not ending the event quite yet. I just want to make sure I don't lose any of these questions if I could answer quickly. All right, we'll be able to download all of these. So I'm going to go ahead and click the archive all. I imagine it will save them somewhere. Okay. All right, team, I'm going to go ahead and end the event.
Thanks all.